This was another wild day in a wild week on Wall Street. The Dow plunged nearly 335 points today, its biggest point drop of the year. But just yesterday, it was up nearly 275, its biggest gain of the year. And the day before that, it fell 273. And by the way, after all that bungee jumping, the index is up only 0.5% for the entire year. Let's bring in Anthony Mason. Now, Anthony, what is going on?
Yeah, Scott, it was the Dow's worst day since February. The market's been whipsawed all week, trying to figure out just where the global economy is. It rallied 275 points yesterday when the Federal Reserve minutes showed the Fed intends to keep interest rates low. But it lost all of that and more today on worries about slowing growth in Europe, where some analysts now fear the possibility, Scott, of a double-dip recession.
And as we were watching the Dow bounce around, came the news today that China has surpassed the United States as the largest economy in the world.
Yeah, the trend line's been clear for a while, Scott, but the International Monetary Fund says that by one measure, China has now passed us. And the shift in economic power is visible right here on the streets of New York. The Mark Waldorf Astoria Hotel on Park Avenue is where President Obama stays when visiting New York. In 1974, when China's future premier Deng Xiaoping first visited the U.S., he stayed at the Waldorf. Now, a firm led by Deng's grandson-in-law is buying the Waldorf. In the largest deal ever by a Chinese investor for an American building, Anbang Insurance will pay almost $2 billion to buy the hotel from Hilton. And the IMF says China's surging economic power will this year surpass the U.S., when China's GDP, adjusted for purchasing power, will hit $17.6 trillion to the U.S. economy's $17.4 trillion. How fast is China growing at this point?
The Chinese economy is growing at the slowest it's grown in a generation, which is just over 7%.
Bill Adams of PNC Financial says that's still more than double the U.S.
In the U.S., we'd kill for 7% real GDP growth. But by Chinese standards, that's very, very slow. And wages are rising very quickly, so it's no longer a cheap labor supply in China. So a lot of the drivers of that old growth model have sort of been used up.
The U.S. had been the world's biggest economy since 1872, when we surpassed Britain. And in raw dollars, the U.S. remains number one. U.S. GDP is more than $17 trillion. China's is just over $10 trillion. But economists estimate China will surpass us by that measure, too, within a decade. Together, the U.S. and China account for fully 1/3 of the global economy.
Thanks, Anthony.